Okay, well, we can get started. Feel free to keep putting any questions in the chat as we talk. This is a very casual conversation and love to hear if you have any real-time questions for Abby. But Abby, we're so excited you're here and willing to join us and talk about this very important topic. But just for those who are maybe are new to Missing Chapters, this is just a series that we do at Nava to help explore, those world side, those insights or those tips and tricks that maybe aren't in the handbook, but we can talk about here and yeah, explore them further. So we have this pretty regularly. You can always join anytime or go listen to past sessions. We have them hosted on our website. But Nava I'm your host today, and I work at Nava, and Nava is just a modern benefits brokerage on a mission to fix healthcare. So we do that by starting with the 160 million Americans who need healthcare, employee-sponsored healthcare, and we try to get them better access by providing better strategies, better cost analysis, better tools and technology. So that's what we're all about. And we have the very own Abby Wilson, who's the VP of HR at Rhode Skincare. And we are so excited because she is an expert in the field. And I'm happy to have you just quickly introduce yourself, Abby, and then we'll get into it.
Amazing. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. As Anna said, my name is Abby. I've been with Rode since December. Prior to that, I had a very long history in private equity and in CPG. And this is a topic that I am super passionate about and can't wait to just like jump in, dive in, answer questions, maybe learn something from Anna yourself, and anyone else on as well. So really, really excited to be here.
We are so happy you are. So thank you for taking your time out to share your knowledge, your expertise, and how you've learned so much about this topic. So with that, let's dive right in.
Do it.
Abby, when you think about, performance-based culture and just performance in general, what does that really mean for you and for Rhode Skin care?
Yeah, I think the great news is that what it means for me and what it means for Rode is very similar, and that was part of the reason why I joined the company. But it's all about for us the how and the what. So, what are we
Mm,
trying to achieve as a business? That has to be answered first, and then what do we need to do to get there? And we fundamentally believe that like we win and we lose as a team. And so when
mm,
I think about performance-based culture, I think that's kind of where you start as a team,
mhm.
what does winning look like? Because then if everyone's performing at their peak, theoretically the business should be doing well. So they work in tandem versus being these kind of two separate elements.
I like that. I like the sentiment of, we win and lose as a team. That's hard to adapt. Like that's hard to like rally around, especially if it wasn't something you previously had as a company and now you have to shift and like think through like, okay, how do we get there? Or you go off course and have to course correct. Um, so I don't know, what do you think, you know, I guess why do you think so many companies adopt performance processes without first, defining what performance actually means for them? Because I think they all want what you just described, but what's the disconnect? Why do you think that happens?
Yeah, I'm sure there's probably a lot of different answers to this, and people in the chat probably would say, leadership misalignment, a lot of things that go.
True. Yeah, yeah.
In my experience, because I've done this a lot, especially within private equity, sitting down with all these companies, and the first thing that they say is they want high performers. I want A plus players. But then when you start to dig into it, no one can actually define what that looks like. Um, and oftentimes they can't define it for themselves as a whole. So if we walk back and we say, all right, what does high performance look like to you at an individual level in this role or in on your team? And they're kind of murky. Then I pull back and I go, okay, well, what does high performance look like as a company? Like, what does it mean if we exceeded expectations? What does it mean if we meet if we use performance review criteria in as a company? And oftentimes it's just very murky. And so I say, well, if it's murky at a company or a holistic level, of course it's going to be murky at an individual level. We can't
Mm,
put the two together. And I think that's what tends to happen is companies are really quick, or maybe leadership is really quick to jump to if we get high performing individuals, then the company will be high performing. And I think we have to define that performance roadmap. We have to set the vision. We have to
Mm.
create the standard and the expectation that will then not only attract and draw in high performance, but it will create that map for them. And then they know where to go.
And that takes time.
And that
Like
it
that
does. It takes
takes
time.
time.
And you're going to iterate, right? Like
Mm.
what was high performance for Rode 3 years ago when it really set off?
Mm.
Very different than what it is today, as a more established brand or established company. And
Mm.
I think oftentimes companies tend to look at what somebody else is doing. Um, and it's like, oh, well, they were doing XYZ at Google, so we should go do that. Or there was a big time where there was a lot of crowdsourcing around performance management. So you could go and you could look at what every company was doing, what Meta was doing, Google, all of that.
Mm.
And that's great for Meta and Google, but you are not Meta and Google. So you can iterate off of those things. You can use it as a start, but to just say we'll adopt the same principles doesn't make sense because your roadmap is not the same.
Mm. That's so important. But I think, sometimes leadership's like, ooh, shiny. That seems to be working for them. Let's go. So like, okay, how from your perspective, your experience, like how can leaders better manage, coach, communicate performance expectations so employees know what it looks like? What is that? Is it a program? Like what have you seen work so
Yeah.
so they stay focused sometimes?
I think, well, first and foremost, I guess I would say different topic, but I am also very passionate about like management, training, and investment. I think we have
Okay.
a lot of people in people management that do have never had any formal training or coaching on how to be managers. So
Mm.
how to better manage, coach, and communicate is a skill. You don't just have
Mm.
it one day because you get promoted into that. So that's a separate
That's
topic
true.
that maybe we come back and we do a
Yes.
review on.
Okay. We'll do it. Yeah. Couple months.
Put
We'll
that
have you
in.
back.
But let's assume that somebody has had that, right? And they're a really, really strong manager. I think you
Hmm.
have to be able to draw a through line for your team. So here's where we're
Mm.
going. Here's what I think it's going to take to get here. And so this is what I'm asking of you. Here's how you as the individual really contribute. And this is what good looks like. This is what great looks like. And then you have to just stay really consistent with them. So if you're changing the goalpost constantly, and I've been at companies where that's the case, it's confusing. Even for your high performers, they're just like, okay, what was considered excellent 2 days ago, now you're
Mm.
telling me is something totally different, or you're constantly shifting the goals. So, how am
Mm.
I supposed to meet expectations if I can't catch up, if I can't get ahead? And so,
Mm.
if we're going to draw that kind of roadmap for them, theoretically, if we think about it in that visual, then we have to be
Mhm.
able to sit down with them on a consistent basis and look at it and go, where are we at? How close are we?
Mm.
Where did we fall off? I think if you're not checking in at least monthly on how performance is
Okay.
going, I'm assuming performance isn't a priority.
Okay, that's interesting. I was going to ask that follow-up question of like, yeah, what should that cadence be? Because I know for me, sometimes you just wait for that 6 month mandatory check-in. And, I maybe I need to reevaluate. Even if the company's not like,
Right.
managers who are proactive, who want to be good, who want to like truly coach. Yeah, I think okay, so monthly, that's a good
Least monthly.
yeah.
And some companies, especially in a startup environment, move so fast. A whole
Yeah.
world can change. Road is an example in 6 months' time. So that just wouldn't work, right? Because again, we've just moved. We're already on to the fourth, fifth vision item goal. It just wouldn't work. So at least monthly, because then it allows you to course correct if something isn't going
Mm,
well. Um,
yeah.
you have time to like re-steer it a little bit. And if things are going
Mm,
amazing, I mean, who doesn't want
mm.
to hear you're doing amazing? Like, who doesn't want to hear your performance is
Amazing.
like out of the park? What else could we do? How else could we support you? Like, I think it's a win, whether it's an underperformer or a top performer. A monthly check-in is
Yeah. Okay, that's good. That's great. So, that's got to be hard for HR though. Like, because if the business is constantly changing or, leadership, it's like HR is trying to navigate. So what role do you think HR plays in ensuring performance process is intentional, it's timely, and it's not just like check the box, we did it for the year?
Yeah. Uh, I guess this
It's
is
a
tough.
loaded question, isn't
It's a
it?
little loaded, and I think it feels a little gold. What my answer, I guess my gut tells me it's gonna feel a little Goldilocks. So
Okay.
when we get to like Q&A, people feel free to push back on me and say, "Hey, I don't know," but I think this is a huge opportunity for us in HR to get beyond the administrative and the systems role that we oftentimes find ourselves in. I am very,
Mm,
very passionate about HR having a seat at the strategic leadership table because I think when it comes to performance, we get to facilitate and we get to co-create with our leaders on how we define performance. Like you get to be the
mm,
expert in that and what it looks like in practice and how we hold each other and our teams accountable. You get to
mm,
be the one who can really inform the rest of the leadership team on that. And then you can't do it for them because I see this is where the Goldilocks comes in. We by
mm,
nature, I find in HR are very supportive. We want to help, we want to handhold, we want to guide, we want to do all the things. And so what ends up happening is that we put this process together in a vacuum and we do it all for everybody. Basically, it's like, oh, don't worry about this. I know you've got so much on your plate. So I'll take this all on and then I'll just roll it out for you. And I'll tell you exactly what to say. And I'll tell you exactly what to do.
yeah.
You're essentially doing their job, right? Like, so
Mm,
we can't do that.
seen
We
that.
have to co-create. We have to do with, not for. Um,
With
and
not for, I like that.
yeah, like we are a part of a team, a leadership team. We should be doing this together. And then we can really check in with each other on whatever that cadence looks like to say, is this working well for your team? What needs to be changed? Like, now let me get your feedback. Now that you have something to react to, let me get your feedback
Mm,
and figure out how we adjust this because it's not one size fits all and they get to be a part of it too. And now we can say that we built a performance process that works for our company, our team at our stage, and we did it together versus I kind of created this cookie cutter thing. I
mm.
passed it over to you and said,
Yeah, I've seen that before.
uh-huh.
Not at Nava. We're really good. No,
I
I've
mean,
seen the
I've done
best.
it before. I've done it where I'm like, I know everyone's so busy. Let me just do this thing, and then I'll
Yeah.
train you on the best practice.
Mm,
It totally eliminates any of their feedback. It eliminates any of their buy-in. So people are just checking the box at that point. They're checking the box that you created for them, but they're just checking the box. And then no one is really like doing it with their full head, their full heart. They're just doing it to say they did it so that they don't get
mm,
in trouble by HR.
hmm. Well, I'll have to be honest. Like sometimes it's like when, even in those formal review processes, like if it's not at the right time, like if that's the really busy time of the
Yeah,
year for you, and you're just like, what, another thing to do? Like, so I love that you're like that co-creation, because if you're co-creating with the business, then you're timing it right to hopefully not be a burden. Um,
that's
so
right.
follow-up question there as co-creating, because that's, like you said, it's Goldilocks kind of feels uh you know ideal sometimes just to say it. Are you co-creating at like the leadership level, so getting
Yeah.
that C team on board, or is it like also down to like maybe the manager level, and like what's that look like for you, just to give us, just to frame it up,
Yeah.
for example? Yeah.
I think from my perspective, I like to do it at the leadership level, but I expect my leaders to get feedback and buy-in and information from their own team. So I expect each functional leader that sits around the leadership table to, if we are talking performance management and we're talking a process or we're talking a system or whatever it may be, I expect that you are soliciting input and ideas from your team and you're bringing
Mm.
that in. And probably filtering out some things too, right? Like if somebody's just like, I hate this, I never want to do this, well, that's not useful feedback. Um,
Yeah.
but bringing useful feedback to the table as a part of like, hey, if we've thought about it from here. So if I use Rode as an example, we launched our first like true performance management framework at the beginning of the year. And I had all these like ideas and plans around timing. And the marketing team came to me, the leader of the marketing team came and just said, like, hey, we have two major launches back to back that essentially sandwich this. And while we'll do it,
Mm,
I don't know if this is going to get
mm,
you the best engagement in this process because everyone
mm.
is really heads down on this. And so we moved it. Totally fine. Like it
Yeah,
doesn't have to be
I
this
love that.
big arbitrary thing. It was just like, all right, we'll push it back two
Mm,
weeks. We can do that.
mm.
And then everybody's
I
more
like that. Yeah. No, I like that because like you said, opening that space to then have the conversation gets them to buy in. Because if you would have just said, "Hey, this is what we're doing," marketing would have just grudgingly said, and I can say that because I'm on the marketing team. Like we're grudgingly. No, kidding.
You're like, fine, we're gonna do it. And then they're all talking about it behind my back,
Yeah,
saying like how much
exactly.
they hate
Yeah.
this. I don't want anybody to hate it. I don't want it to feel like it's this big, weighty thing that happens to you. I
Mm,
want it to feel, one, it should feel so ingrained in kind of like the fabric and the DNA of the company that it's constantly going on, right? That's our ideal
mm.
state, which is that we're a high performance culture, and high performance culture means X, Y, and Z. And so it just feels like that's a part of the day
I
to
like
day.
that. I
And
like
so if it
that.
ever feels like it's just this like burdensome thing that's happening to you, we should probably take a step back and figure out where we need to pull back, change, update.
Yeah, that's a good check. Like that's a good gut check. If it feels like it's happening to you, I like that. It feels very actionable, very like, okay, yeah, let's just, because we all want the outcome of high achieving, high performing, meet our goals, etc. And yeah, that's good framing. Okay. Um, so so I guess to kind of then bridge that to like how do you connect individual goals and the process, so whatever your tool you're using to like track performance management, like reviews, one-on-ones, and coaching, to the overall company goals, like what does that process look like? Yeah, how do you do that from your
I mean,
perspective?
I think you have to have a system. You don't have to have an expensive system, but you have to have a system. I'm a huge fan of Lattice. They should pay me for the shameless plug. Um, there's a million tools out there that will do it, and essentially, you want to be able to have a place like you could do it honestly in like a Google sheet, which is here are the company goals for the year, right? If you have further out than that, if you have like a big vision, that's on there. Here's the vision, here are our goals for the year, here's our department, and here's yours. And we're just pulling that up in all of our one-on-ones. We're pulling it up when we're
Mm,
doing quarterly goal setting. And it's a way to see it all in front of you. So then that
mm,
way everything becomes a lot more simple or a lot simpler, a lot less cumbersome. I think the reason
mm.
people tend to really despise reviews when you think about like the traditional performance review is because they are very time consuming, especially if you have more than like three or four direct
Uh,
reports. They're really
yes.
burdensome. They're
Hmm.
vague. No one gets any like enjoyment out of it. The amount of people that like have a lot of anxiety over reviews, both in giving and receiving, I'm like, hold on a second. This is not what this is about. There should be no anxiety. It should basically be a recap of everything we've already been talking about. And so
Mm,
if we are having to go back over a year's worth of data in our head that we haven't captured, of course you're going to hate this on both sides. But if we
mm,
have really good quality one-on-ones and we have a place where we're storing all of that information, it just really becomes it's like a checks and balances thing. Hey, in this formal review, is everything lining up in the way it's been lining up for the year, right? If all of our one-on-one,
Mm,
all of our goal setting conversations have been leading up to this point, it really should just be like, when Instagram does like the year recap or like
love
Spotify
it.
does
Yeah.
your year in
Yes.
review, it's
Yeah.
a Spotify recap.
Well, and I love those because technology does it for me.
Technology will do it for you. There's so many like AI plugins that are happening now where if you take really good notes, it scans it and then it essentially creates your review for you. Of course, you shouldn't just like like thumbs up and be done. You should fill in with the gaps,
Mm,
but it's so helpful to be able to say like, hey, if I do the right thing right now, if I take really good notes during all of our one-on-ones, that's going to save me hours on the back end. Again,
mm,
especially if you have a ton of direct reports or you have
mm,
managers who have a lot of direct reports and that's their biggest piece of feedback is just like, I don't have the time.
mhm.
These like 15-minute time frames throughout the week will save you hours and hours in the long run.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, I like that. I guess we're getting some questions in the chat. Let's see. Amy asked, out of curiosity, how large is Road? At a smaller organization, would you consider including managers at the collaboration level? So back to like being co-creators and um getting that level of buy-in, especially if you're like, I know I've worked with some C teams in the past, not at Nava, but other organizations, or I've heard like feedback, like it's hard to get that buy-in, but sometimes like getting them to have a conversation, like with the leader of engineering, for example, like, hey, I'm gonna go talk to your managers. Like a little legwork can go a long way. What kind of examples have you seen just to help give more context for Amy?
Yeah, Amy. So I think juxtaposition here is Rode currently is around 60 employees. When I started, we were at 38. So we've
Oh,
grown a lot in the last
doubled.
few
Yeah.
months.
Wow.
Yes. So creating a performance management process for 38 people was a breeze. Where I came from before was another CPG company, and it was, I want to say like 500 plus, and it was global. And so very, very different. Also did not have a performance process. So when we did that, we did go to different levels in the organization
Oh, okay.
because the C-suite was going to be pretty far removed from a manager, right? Whereas at Rode, they work together constantly. So
Mm.
that wasn't really a need. But at that company, we did it in a couple different phases and we worked kind of bottoms up. So we started with like
Oh,
a group of managers, and pitched
mm,
like, this is what we're thinking. Does this meet your needs?
cool.
Based on what we've heard from your feedback and engagement surveys. Got that. Then we took it to the director and VP level and said, how do you feel about it?
Oh,
Then we could go to the C-suite and say, this is what your teams are asking for.
I love
So
that.
you don't have to like create any additional work on should we do this, should we not, should we talk to our team, should we not? We've already talked to your teams. They said that this will
Yes.
meet their needs. So all we need you to do is give
Mm.
me a thumbs up.
Oh,
And
I like
it's
that.
really transparent. So I think the
Mm,
question was like, would you consider engaging? 100% at a certain point, if
mm,
you feel like your C-suite or your exec team is pretty far removed from your manager group, it
mm.
makes total sense to do that.
Yeah, I like that. Well, and then you like again, you're getting that buy-in quickly from that level that's gonna probably be the ones that enforcing this review process.
100%. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for that question, Amy. If anyone has others, please drop them in. Sounds like you got a request for your Spotify recap, so
Is
you
it
can drop that
Beyonce?
in.
100%. All Beyonce, the entire,
All Beyonce. Okay.
yes, her
No Taylor
entire
Swift. Okay.
discography. Yeah.
Well, um, okay, so switching gears just a little bit because I think, I think it's fun to outline this process and really understand like, okay, these are the steps you need to take. But what happens sometimes, I think, for at least from my perception, is like, okay, what if something goes off course? Then what do you do? So can you share any examples of like where you've seen there was a disconnect from like business goals or and you had to like course correct or I don't know, just help the company realign, I guess.
Yeah. I think I'll preface by saying my preference is to have empathetic leaders over anything else all day long. I will take an empathetic leader over a non-empathetic one any day of the week. And sometimes I think we lean really, really hard into the empathy and we end up with things that are just like not helpful. So if we're not super clear around goal setting, for instance, if you're rolling out goal setting, what is
Mm,
a good goal? How does this look? How is it met? Whether you're using SMART goals or OKRs, explaining, detailing what that means. And
mm.
then also explaining that you want them to align to the business. Because what I've seen happen is people will put a lot of personal goals in there. And this may be a hot take, so feel free to
I love it.
interrupt
I
me when
love a
I
hot take.
disagree. But my
That's,
hot take is that your personal goals do not belong in your professional tracker. Your company is not paying you to achieve personal goals like run a marathon or
oh,
work out 5 days a week. I've seen a lot of fun
yeah.
things on there.
Okay.
I'm so happy for you, and I'm so excited that that is a personal goal of yours. And we don't bonus based on your ability to run a
Mm,
marathon, right? We bonus based on if the company meets certain metrics. So we have to decide as a company, how are we going to win and how would we lose? And then you, as the individual, have to say, how am I contributing to that? And
mm,
so that doesn't mean that their growth and development isn't important. And that doesn't mean that it
sure.
couldn't be included in the goal, but it's how do you connect the dots in that? So if
Okay.
getting a certain credential, right, or completing a certain course would support your ability to
Mm,
contribute, then
hmm
I think that makes sense. So if I use previous company, we had an analyst who was really charged with creating this whole new kind of like headcount process management all in Google Sheets because everything was in Google Sheets. And it was
mm,
brand new. We were never going to do it. We've never done it before. But we really wanted to look at on a monthly basis what our headcount budget was. And we wanted it to align to what the business was like earning and what the percentage was. So she was totally down to do something like that. It was a really big, important thing for the company, and she needed a lot more knowledge before she could do that in a way. So she asked if, she could take a much more detailed Excel course. And she put that in her
oh,
OKR, right? Like because by the end of the quarter,
yeah.
she was going to have built out this Google sheet that was going to allow us to view things in real time, but that was her end result. Before she got there, she needed to
Mm,
learn essentially like how to do all the functionality in it.
mm.
And so
Huh.
to me, that is a great example of expectations aligning. It would
Yeah.
not have aligned to be like, I want to make sure I go on vacation for 3 weeks out of this year and work-life balance. Like those are not things that ultimately contribute to the business.
Yeah. Great goals.
Great goals. I
For
want that for
goals.
you. And so I find that managers oftentimes are also so supportive of their people and sometimes very protective of their people. And so when you
Mm,
have a really high performer who's saying, for instance, like, oh, I barely took any vacation time last year and like I'm nervous about burning out. I really want to prioritize work-life balance this year. It's
mm.
natural for the manager to go, oh my God, yes, please, let's put that on your list. And then
That's a good
I will do everything
example.
I can to support you.
Mm,
And
hmm
I love that. You should do
mm.
that. That should be a priority. It just can't be a business goal.
Yeah. And you have to draw a line somewhere.
You gotta draw
So,
a line. Yeah.
yeah. Like, okay, we got another question in the chat. Love these questions coming in. So, Abby, what do you think about this? Any suggestions for for HR departments that are just one person to push for consistency in review cycles to managers and C-suite?
Yeah, so I am also a one-person team. So
Oh,
yay,
wow.
one-person team.
Yes.
Yes, a small but mighty. I think two things. The first is I think we have to be really realistic and honest about what we can do.
Mm,
and then where we need our managers and our leaders to really step up and step in. So if you create a really overly cumbersome process, just know like you're the checks and balances, you're the accountability factor. And so if you can't handle it, manage it by yourself from a capacity perspective, then it's probably not the right process for you guys at that given time. So first think about
mm,
like what you truly have the capacity for. And then second, um, I set high expectations with my leaders because we are a high performance company. And so there wasn't a lot of wiggle room for what I would call exception cases. My expectation of you as a leader is that you do this, you do it on time, and here's what happens as a result of that. People get their promotions on time, people get their new compensation on time, people know where they stand. If you
mm,
don't do these things on time, then you have to go back to your team and explain why they didn't get that promotion, right? That's not on me, that's on you. And I
mm,
think generally speaking, it sounds a lot harsher when we're talking about it now. Of course, I'm not just like,
mm.
this is how it is. But I think
Yeah.
really, leaning on your team, again, we are co-creating this together, leaning on your leaders and saying, like, this is my expectation of you.
Mm,
You are a huge component to this, and I can't do it without you. So if this is important to us and we want to do this as a team, we truly have to do this as a team. Um, and so I think that's where that is. From a
mm,
consistency across the board, which might be where the question is, like, how do I ensure that my marketing leader is evaluating the same way as my sales?
mm.
Um, Calibrations. So we did a full calibration and we went through, we're a smaller company, so we could do that. But we went through every person. We went through their reviews, their ratings, and we ensured that we were calibrating correctly and we adjusted based off of that. So there wasn't a thing as like an easy grader or a hard grader. We all
Mm.
took part in calibrating those ratings, and then we were transparent with our teams that we did calibrate. So we let them know that as a leadership group, we sat down and we spent 3 hours going through every person's review and their rating, and we adjusted based on the holistic rating process.
Wow. And and did you guys come up with that rating system prior? Like, did you
Mhm.
come to the table and you're like, hey, this is how I think we should do it, and then got some feedback and then said, okay, now we're going to do this. I mean, that
Yeah.
takes time to do it, but so valuable. Um,
It was so again, part of this could just be because we were smaller, but I've done this at larger teams too, and I found it to be really effective, which is first you design it, you get alignment, right? Then you communicate before the review cycle starts. You say, this is
I like
to
that.
the entire team.
Mm,
Everyone can see and has visibility into totally depends on your rating system, but let's say you're like an exceeds, meets, and gaining towards
cool.
expectations,
Oh,
whatever that
mhm.
may be, or underperforming, however you want to describe it. And we are really, really clear, going back to expectations of what constitutes exceeds, what constitutes meets, what
I
constitutes
like that.
underperforming. And we share that out. So then that way, everyone
Oh, I
is
like that.
fully aware of how we would go about thinking. Um, and then there's no surprises. So there isn't this like, well, I
Mm,
didn't realize exceeds meant this. I didn't realize that
yeah.
this was the new
Mm,
expectations. Um, so one, I actually found that from a calibration perspective, if you're really, really clear and transparent with that up front and you're really
mm.
consistent, we didn't end up having a lot of like exception cases where we had to look and go, wait, how are we so far off here? Um,
Oh,
so we had a couple
mm.
that we had to calibrate, but very, very small calibrations. And it was just because there might have been some nuances with expectations from different leaders. But
Oh, okay.
overall, that transparency up front helps a lot.
And like that also sets the boundaries and the expectations of like, this is how we're going to do it. This is what we're all going to follow along
Mhm.
and do. So oh, I really like that. Collaborate or calibrations. Could probably tack a whole session on that.
We could do a
Um,
whole session on calibration.
Best
I
practice.
love them. I find them to be like so fascinating. Just to like get a bunch of people in a room and understand what the why and the what behind
Mm.
a system, why they chose a rating, how they validated that rating, or vice versa, how they first started with more of the validation and then chose a rating based on that validation. It's
Oh,
really
interesting.
fascinating study in
Oh.
behavior.
Okay, well, we might have to bring you back on a
Yeah.
session or write a blog post with you,
Yes.
because that I think is crucial and to like again hitting the expectation of the outcomes of what you're trying to do. So speaking of expectations, how like okay, from an employee experience, me myself, I think others out there, there's just this there's like an expectation or not expect a perception that feedback feels a little ambiguous. It's almost a reflection of the person giving the feedback versus like actually sharing something valuable, which I think what I love what you said before, like you make that very clear on your ratings, and how you're going to measure and what that means so that it gives some more structure. But and so maybe that's the example or that's the answer. But I'm just curious from your perspective of like how can leaders make expectations feel more, quantitative and clear through the different stages of growth because how you would measure a senior manager versus your interns is going to be probably a lot different.
Who, yeah. So I would say this is kind of an evolving process here. And it's typically evolving in a lot of places because I think when you use the term high performance culture, you have very, very high expectations. And I would say that is totally okay. If you should have high expectations of your team, you should not have unrealistic expectations of your team. So oftentimes, I really first want leaders to take the time to understand what their expectations are and talk to me about that. And what I
Mm.
find is when the ambiguity really starts to set in, it's because they are kind of sort of without wanting to say it, holding someone accountable to expectations that are above what you would truly expect of someone in a, let's call
Mm.
it
I
manager.
think I'm guilty. I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
Okay. This
Um,
is for me, Abby. This is for
nope.
me.
I've done it too because you might have this like stellar coordinator. And you're just like, this person epitomizes what it means to be a coordinator. But no, they don't. They actually epitomize what it means to be like a really, really high performing or high achieving person. Or actually, they should have been promoted and you weren't paying
Uh,
attention. And so you start holding everybody else accountable to that same thing.
mm,
That's on expectations. Again, that exceeds expectations. And so you can't hold
mm,
everybody accountable to an exceeding. And you certainly can't hold everybody accountable to manager level work when they are not a manager. So we first have to get really clear and honest with ourselves on that. Um, and that can take some time, but that's first and foremost. Then you have to, as a leader, be really comfortable in the discomfort. I'm a really big fan of like the idea of like challenge directly and care personally. If you truly care about the person that's on your team, then you should be able to challenge them and say, hey, these are my expectations, and here's where you're falling short, or here's where you're exceeding. And it should become very, um, it should feel much more data driven. I don't want to say it's not personal
mm,
because I do think, again, you're caring personally about them, and a lot of our identities are wrapped up in our work. So there is a
mm,
world in which it is a little personal, but it's not subjective. It's not vague. It's here's what I
mm,
expect, here's where you're at, here's the gap. And it becomes a little bit cleaner. But I find that we get uncomfortable with doing that. So we don't really do it. We expect people to
mm,
read our minds, and then we get frustrated when they don't. Um,
mm.
and I guess I just look at it as like people's jobs are hard enough. We're asking a lot of people, especially in high performance environments. Don't ask them to read your mind too. That's just like, is that going to be a bullet point on the job description? It just
Oh my gosh.
let's do.
It is though. I do feel like that's like, yeah.
I want them to be so clear, so crystal clear with here are my expectations that then it paves the way for them to just go do. Could you imagine how much time, energy, and effort someone would save if they didn't have to think about and guess and anticipate your needs, but you just spelled it out and they just went and did?
Mm,
It's such
mm,
a, I think, I know it sounds really simple, I know it's not easy, but it actually is really simple. It just
Mm.
requires some intentionality and some thought from the leaders. And we as HR leaders can help and support them in that and make sure that we're steering them in the right direction for sure.
Well, that's interesting. So you said challenge directly, care personally. I feel
Mhm.
like that is a really good uh something I'm going to put on my sticky note and stick on my computer. I
It's
still
um
use sticky notes.
it's from the concept radical candor. So if anybody
Oh,
has read the book,
yes.
I'm
Okay, I knew
I'm
this.
obsessed. I love it. I think again, it's going to sound really simple and then you look and you're like, "Oh, it's not that easy." No, it's not that easy, but I think if people want to get better or if you're looking for a way to improve your leadership team's skill in this area, give them that book or
Mm,
take them through that training material. And because I think they do a really good job in that of clarifying that feedback is a gift.
mm,
People want to grow and develop, and the only way they can do that is through feedback.
mm,
So challenging directly is not hurtful. It's not unkind. It's one of the kindest things that you can actually do for people. So we have to kind of get over our fear of that a little bit. Get out of the
mm.
discomfort, do it because it's helpful, it's useful, and it will help people grow.
Okay, I know this is kind of going off just a little bit on the feedback because what would you recommend or what advice do you have for managers um who are trying to solicit feedback about their, team members, maybe from a different team?
Mhm.
Because I feel like sometimes uh depending on the process or the structure or the technology you're using, I have found that it's like I'm not getting good feedback. And I don't know if it's just like maybe you guys have had to do this at Road of like, here's how we train people to give feedback. I don't know if there's just like, especially when it's not what is it? It's not double blinded or like you can
Mhm.
see the feedback that you're
Mhm.
giving to somebody. And I'm sure that's culturally dependent on the
Yeah.
company. But I don't know, any thoughts there? I mean, because it is so valuable and it is a gift and it can also just be someone just doesn't either know how to give good feedback or they don't give any feedback. I don't know. What coaching would you have for managers and HR leaders to help?
Yeah, I think be specific in your ask. So, if somebody's giving you, like if you're trying to solicit feedback on a team member from cross-functional teams, which we do in our like review processes, we usually
Mhm.
want at least three pieces of feedback from a cross-functional partner.
Mm,
And you just say, "Hey, can you provide feedback on this person?" Or, tell me, their strengths and their areas of opportunity. It's your ask is very vague and therefore you're going to get a
mhm,
vague response. So
mhm,
get specific. If you're asking a cross-functional partner for feedback, my guess is there's been some sort of a project or something that they've done with your team member in the last few months, year, whatever, which is why you're asking. So get specific with it. What was the project? What was this person's role in it? And what was the person that you're soliciting feedback on? What was their role? And then get really, really specific with that. How did they perform on XYZ? Did they meet these deadlines? What exactly are you asking? Because the more
mm,
specific you can get, then it's going to be hard for them to give vague answers. But if
mm.
you ask vague questions, you will get vague answers.
Which
So good data in equals good data out kind of a thing.
I guess that's important as far as like building your own process and criteria is like ensuring you have that flexibility to change those questions. Because I've seen some performance management tools that are just like kind of out of the box and then companies are just like, great, this is how we should do it. And what I'm hearing from you is like, hey, you take a step back, look again of how it aligns to
Yes.
what you're trying to drive towards and make the changes, even if it means some customization or
That's
like what
right.
have you? Okay.
Yeah, so if your goal, like, this is not performance management is not a one size fits all. If your goal is just to get people in the habit of giving feedback, you actually don't care if it's good feedback. Because sometimes that is true. When I was at when I was in PE, we had a company that they were so quiet. No one ever gave feedback. And then when somebody quit or whatever, you'd be like, oh, yeah, that person was the worst. We're like, wait, I'm sorry, what? They were here for 10 years. What are you talking about? So
Yeah.
I was just like, can we just get them in a place of giving feedback? I don't actually care if it's good quality yet. I just care that
Mm,
they get in the habit of doing it. And so you might have off-the-shelf cookie cutter systems that like ping people on a weekly basis or set reminders to give it. And again, you're just getting them in the habit of doing it. Then,
mm,
once you've built up that habit, then you can go, okay, how do we increase the quality of the feedback? So I think
mm.
sometimes we bite off more than we can chew, and we're like, I want better quality, better quantity. I want this process. I want this system. Don't overwhelm yourself. Don't overwhelm other people. Let's just take it in some digestible pieces and start small with, can we just get people giving like weekly feedback? Cool. That's enough for me in the short term.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like that's so crucial to the review process and just like driving that culture of performance, high performance too. Like if it's top of mind and you want it to be top of mind, I like I like the adjustments that you can
Yeah.
make to be flexible there. That's good. That's good. Okay. All right. I know we're coming towards the end, so I kind of want to hit on just one last thing around just driving alignment. So I think you've hit on this just a little bit before, but um, you know, you've been at small organizations, you've been at large organizations. How do you get everyone moving in the same direction with these shared objectives? Because back to your like, hey, our outcome is high performance, hit our goals. Give us some shared examples there, some advice on how to do that.
Yeah, I think I'm sure there's a million different ways you could. My perspective on this is that people have to care about whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. In the same way they have to for their own personal stuff, right? If someone sets a New Year's resolution of going to the gym 5 days a week, but that's not connected to anything, they're probably not going to go to the gym 5 days a week.
That's
It's not
true.
going to happen. So the same thing here, I think I talk to my leaders a lot around this like kind of concept of like your team should want to follow you off a cliff. And that I don't mean that literally, but the vision that you paint for them should be so important to them. They should care so deeply about it that
Mm,
they want to work towards it. And it's important to them to hit their goals. It means something to them to hit them or to not hit them, and I want them to feel invested. And
mm,
you have to incentivize them in some way to do that. And I think oftentimes we use really at companies, like we use some really arbitrary or just like not that meaningful objectives like revenue and EBITDA. Who gets
mm.
excited about revenue and EBITDA?
That's
I'm not saying that you
yeah.
can't do revenue and EBITDA as a big number, but you're going to have to explain to people why. What does it mean to hit these
Mm,
revenue numbers? How does that come back around to them? How do we use it to invest in the company? Does it
mm.
mean, more money in their pocket? Does it mean more resources? Does it mean better and cooler company trips every year? Like help them understand a little bit.
I think my did
I think
mine.
I think it was mine. We're back. We
Oh,
made
okay, we're back. What it wouldn't be a true Zoom webinar if there wasn't
a freeze
just
moment.
a quick blur. I was like, wait, I'm gonna take a drink. Maybe it'll come back. Um, okay, so I love that because it's like, it's really providing, just that clarity around where you're headed, what you need to accomplish, and then that consistency of hitting the drum beat of like, this is what we're going to do. This is why we're going to do it. And if you're doing it consistently, like you said, on a month to month basis, then, or whatever the cadence is, it's not going to feel so out of left field. I've seen some organizations who have a hard time adapting to a new process because it wasn't consistent, and it was, felt totally random versus like we're all aligned, we're all on the same page. Okay, so Abby, just to wrap us up, I guess any last like parting words or advice as we as HR leaders and managers think through like how do we influence our companies to be more performance driven. I think we're all asked to do, less or do more with less. So
Mhm.
how do you think about that? And what are just like some one, two things just to wrap us all up?
Okay, I think you all can hear me. If you can't hear me, we'll do this another. I'll type it in the chat.
Yes.
We're good? Okay, amazing.
Yeah.
I think I don't want to use this like annoying consulting term of boil the ocean, but I do think it's important. You don't have to boil the ocean here. You can start small. You can do a 30, 60, 90 for all of your new hires, and that could be really meaningful. You can implement a template for one-on-ones, and you're like, we don't do reviews here.
Mm,
We just get all of our managers to one-on-ones every week. Um, it doesn't have to be big and lofty to be meaningful and impactful to your teams. And so actually think small to think big would be my
mm,
biggest piece of feedback, because just taking some action is going to start to move the needle, and then you can solicit feedback, you can iterate, you can grow from there. But don't let the concept of performance management be so big that it keeps you from doing anything.
mm. I think that's so critical. I think I even think that for myself, like any goal you're going to do, it's just like, just get started. Just think,
Yep.
what can you do right now, today, 2 weeks? Like really break it down. I really like that. So, Abby, you've been incredible. I really have enjoyed our session. I've taken some
Same.
notes. Hopefully, all of our listeners have also taken some notes. I think some quick wins that as we kind of close up here is around just like that co-creating, like that. I don't know, that just really resonated to me. Hopefully, it resonated to a lot of you because I think that's an easy bridge into getting other people to buy in and then make those steps together, like break it down together to boil the ocean. So thank you so much. And so that is what we have all for you today. We're so glad you joined us, took time out of your day to just stop and think and explore this whole concept around performance-based culture. So Abby, again, thank you so much. We hope to have you
Yeah.
back and hope everyone else has an amazing rest of their day. Thanks
Thanks,
all.
everybody.